Hey guys, this is Alex, and welcome to the Two Dudes, Brews, and Reviews podcast. On today's episode, we're talking about Jonathan Demme's 1991 psychological thriller, Silence of the Lambs. We get into the film's iconic reputation, how it stacks up to modern thrillers, and question a very familiar horror cliche. If you like what you hear, consider subscribing to the podcast, leave us a rating or a review, and maybe even tell your friends about us. With that being said, we hope you enjoy the show.
Yeah, man, we're doing this in a different space tonight.
The scenery's changed a little bit.
You've needed to stop by, so yeah, we're in my apartment. We just bought a cat today. It's walking around underneath our feet right now.
That is wild.
Yeah, man.
Feels like home in here. You got it decked out in 70s aesthetic, a lot of lamps, and very soft couches.
Yeah. Had like a shaggy carpet,
Yeah.
rug and shit. Believe it or not, most of our furniture and everything is like thrifted. I love going to the thrift with her right now and everything. And that lamp over in the corner over there, fucking $7 at a thrift store.
Oh shit. Don't you guys have like a really crazy thrift store in the area? Like better
There's a
than
couple.
most?
There's a couple really great ones.
It's slim pickings in Middletown.
Yeah,
I'll tell you that.
Like the Valley Thrift is like right down the road.
I remember you guys mentioning that one before.
We actually drive over to Milford every once in a while and like visit the St. Vincent de Paul there because they have a lot of furniture and like a lot of really good housewares and stuff. And also like me and Elizabeth are frugal and artsy, I should say. And so we're somehow making like a lot of things work.
It feels like a unified vision.
Yeah, it's definitely the mastermind over there. I'm having like a fucking blast doing it. So, but yeah, man, we're doing a fun movie. Well, not fun. It was a blast. So me suggesting The Silence of the Lambs, I think, is a sign of starting to grow up hair when it comes to like being able to suggest like slightly disturbing things for the podcast. Also, like I read the book, so I wasn't like super surprised by the story or anything at all.
I'll have some questions about the book versus the film.
You ever heard the saying, we often suffer more in imagination than reality?
I feel like I've heard you say that before to me.
Probably. I can't remember who quoted that. I believe it was like one of the Stoic philosophers, but that's kind of how I felt while watching the film because I read the book. And so I kind of had to paint the picture myself and a lot of these more disturbing things that were described in the book. And
did the film not live up to the grisliness of it?
yeah, like the film had an aura about it, like an energy. Like when people talk about it, it's like either they're like, it puts the lotion on. Like,
this definitely does have like a reputation.
Right.
Like, if you were a kid around the time that this came out or in the years following, it's the artwork on the cover of like the VHS or DVD. That was like a thing of legend.
Right.
When I was a
it's
kid.
Like captivating.
I was so scared of like that image.
And then you watch it and you're like, what?
And it's a great cover, by the way. It's a great fucking, what do you call this? Like a poster?
Yeah, it's the...
I know there's a more official title than cover.
Like it's the art for the DVD box.
Yeah.
Or like, it's the movie art, whatever you want to call it. It does feel wrong saying it that way, doesn't it?
It's not right.
Have you ever seen the cover for the Criterion version?
I have, because I was looking on their website the other day.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
It's one of the most beautiful ones they have.
It's like a Rorschach, or however you say that fucking word.
Yes.
Yeah, dude, this is a iconic fucking movie, often considered one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah, that's something I want to talk about. Like, the way I want to introduce my opinion is I enjoyed the film, but I also think that...
We have an overrated alert coming.
No, let me put it this way. I hope this conversation, by the end of it, we're like, okay, I understand why it got the hype, all the Oscars, and like this legendary, infamous status that this film has. I hope we arrive at that being like a good basis for the film to stand on. Because to me, while there's a lot of like great key factors, certain like themes and subtle things that are going on in the film, I don't know that my opinion right now is at that point.
I get that, like 100%. And that's the way I've felt about it since the first time I saw it, probably in like 2012. And I've seen it a few times over the years. And I think with you recommending it for the podcast and like watching it with a more critical eye, I think I kind of get why it's in that discussion. This 100% sits in the upper echelon of the thriller detective genre, but it's like not one of my favorites.
Right.
I think a lot of the acclaim comes from the fact that it's just a really tight movie. Every scene kind of felt like it had a purpose.
I also think this film at the time was probably the precursor to, how do I put this? The movie is like a precursor from like all of the more modern thrillers that we like enjoy. I think films like Prisoners, Zodiac, obviously. When I see a film like that, where it's basically a thriller detective, bigger budget, refined modern technology, those films are like stepping on the back of this film.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's 90s, and the film has like little sprinkles of what I think my brain is used to.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
How do you feel like about cinematography? Like, that's a big thing for me, where I was like, it's such a dull and generic and plain.
It is a muted tone consistently. I'm actually trying to remember a part where there was contrast with like bright colors.
Okay.
Did that come in?
So there's only like a handful of times that happens. And like one of those being, we're definitely going to arrive at the end at this conclusion, because I think like we need to have this conversation for me to like fully grasp the film, because it's really tight and really subtle, and like you said, it's a muted tone. God, it feels like it came at the perfect time. It's fall right now in Ohio. Literally, the color is being sucked out of my world.
The credit sequence at the beginning of this felt very at home.
That's going to be our future. Like,
the next 6 months.
There's going to be no leaves. And like, it's going to be very bleak and...
Yeah, don't remind me.
Yeah, I can't stand it sometimes.
I love fall, but winter is the fucking worst.
Doesn't it suck your soul away from you?
It really does. I sleep in late, so I don't see much sun during the winter.
Yeah.
And I'm ginger, so like I got double points going against me.
I'm already like feeling like the effects of not having enough vitamin D. Like, it's literally already starting. But there are a handful of times where we actually get to see a little bit of pops of color, and it's really early on. It's right after the opening credits, where she gets in the elevator and all the men are wearing red sweatshirts and she's the only woman. And like, this is something that
this is a theme we're gonna hit.
This is a theme throughout. Like, it runs a straight line through the whole film.
What would you call it? Like a woman in the workplace, like the male gaze type thing.
I think it's kind of strange, because I don't have any like experience like that. I feel like every workplace that I've been in so far, it's like, it's a very like good mixed bag. Maybe it's because of like the actual job itself, like FBI, probably a male dominated field of police.
Police in general.
Like law enforcement.
Yeah.
In the book, it was a theme that didn't really come across in the writing. To me, I mean, granted, I read the book once. I read it over a month. And so like, I don't read super fast, so I don't really have the ability to...
tie symbols and everything together.
Yeah, like, I'm not there yet. Like, I've got a couple more years before I'm going to be able to do anything like that. Because Elizabeth will churn through a book. Like, it's nothing. Like, I mean, she's like, I bought a book. And I'm like,
Olivia's the
like,
same way.
You read so much. And like, I'm like, I know you buying a book, it's going to get used. Like, she fucking churns. Like she said, our unread catalog up there.
There's a lot of books.
All of those books, over half of them are mine. I don't read that quickly, but I have a lot of books I want to read.
Her side will be over with in like a month.
Right.
Probably.
It's nothing. I don't have the ability to pick up on themes like that in books. I guess when it was in the film, I was kind of like a little off put by it, because I'm like, this doesn't feel like, this isn't true to the author's vision. And I'm like, hear me out. I watched this while I was sick. So I was a little bit grumpy.
That was something I was going to ask you about, though. Like how that theme played out in the book. I mean, is it from...
It's from Starling's perspective.
Like first person, hear her thoughts, like all that?
Yeah, and then there are cutaway chapters.
Whose perspective are you taking on that?
I don't think... It's third person. It's third person.
Okay.
So that's the thing. Yeah. It's third person. Sorry.
Like, how would that be done in a subtle way in novel form?
It's dialogue. Like, the dialogue in that book is great. And I think the dialogue is a lot richer than what I was probably used to digesting at the time. Like, granted, I've been reading fantasy books and sci-fi books for the last 8 months. And so like, kind of like a slice of life, very stripped back book like that.
That's true. You don't dip into that.
It's a level of appreciation that I haven't arrived at yet. Like in terms of like how to like absorb that book.
You'll get there for sure.
Right.
I think in every single scene, to some degree, that theme is being played out, and not like just through dialogue. Like if you read Starling's body language,
Right.
like when she talks to men, this is where her performance like really shines for me. Like her eye movement and her body language is
Yes.
like perfect. Everybody else is kind of doing that too. The men, when she walks into the FBI building in the beginning and like she's going through the hallways and like the men stop talking when she passes by, everybody kind of like tightens up.
Oh,
Like-
God, this movie's really good.
It's really good.
It's hitting me now thinking about that.
It feels like the temperature of the room changes every time Starling is in there.
I guess one of those moments where it really starts to kind of come across a little bit more subtly when she's in the car on the way back from taking pictures of the body that washes up in West Virginia. Jack Crawford says to her, oh, I hope telling those men that there was a woman in the room, I hope that, didn't
Set
burn
you
ya."
off.
Yeah. And she's like, it's manners. Also,
Like she says,
she's operating in a way.
like he's her boss.
Right.
It's like, what can she really say?
Right. I feel like there's a level of understanding between these two characters that doesn't really get to come across in the way that I think the book highlights more. Her relationship with Crawford is a lot more developed in the book.
This is something else I was going to ask about.
And that's something that like I really missed with the film. I really wish I had like 15 to 20 more minutes of like just a little bit more of their characters like interacting or like getting to see Crawford outside of the workplace because his character gets explored in the book.
It kind of felt like I didn't know, since we're from Starling's perspective in the film, Crawford's motivations are a little gray. Like, I don't
Exactly.
really understand why. She doesn't understand why she's being sent out to go
Right.
talk to Lecter. And
That's the other thing. It's like there are prior motivations by that character. She's also like basically the top probably student in the
probably
academy. She does really well and like everyone notices her.
Yeah. Ooh, I don't know. You mean the reason why she's sent to go talk to Lecter?
So here's the other thing. Like it's such a weird conversation.
Crossing medias. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like Crawford in the book, his wife is dying. Or like his wife is like basically on life support. Like she's basically like lobotomized in her level of health. And there's a lot of sexual tension between them.
That's what
in
I was
the
going to
book.
ask.
Like it's that. That's sorry. I'm having a really hard time. It's been a long day and like I'm having a hard time catching my feet.
Hey, I totally get it. You got a cat today.
I got a cat today.
I thought the sexual undertones were kind of felt in the movie to a degree.
Yes.
And I was curious about that. Not from her. Like, she respects him.
Right. But also, like, he respects her, and that's the other thing. That's why in the book, it feels like they're drawn really close together. It never escalates to that. That's not ever explored.
It just
But
kind of like
it's
skirts on the surface of it.
they were being drawn together really close in the book. They have a lot more conversations in the book that are not shown in the film. And so, like, that's a perspective I want to see in the film. Because, like you said, the film's really tight. But to me, reading the book first, it felt really incomplete. That's something that I think is taking away from some of my enjoyment.
I think me and you like when directors kind of indulge in scenes like where things are a little long. You get to see like kind of
Yeah.
every detail. And this, the editing is really tight.
Yes.
And you kind of
Right.
like jump right into the middle of situations, like the middle of conversations. You don't see somebody arrive or leave or like that's
Right.
not really ever a part of what's on screen.
The film's really static in character movement, but camera movement is very... The movement of the film is very camera heavy to me.
It is.
I think everything, like you said earlier, it's a very muted film. And so the appreciation for me is starting to be, okay, I have to learn to love this movie a little bit more of a rudimentary form of enjoying a film. Like, I feel like our favorite films are typically, I want a theme that like feels like ever expanding and like compassionate, this really heavy push of emotion through a film. Like Nolan is that way for me. A lot of Nolan films, there is like such heaviness in tone. The way he pushes his themes through films, they're felt really deeply. I think with a film like this, it's just so subtle. You have to like let it grow on you.
I think it being so subtle actually aligns with not the theme, but the main character's perspective because she represses
Yes.
like her history. And that's kind of what Lecter pries at throughout the movie.
Right.
And like things being kind of not emotive makes sense from her perspective.
Yes. This is something I wanted to talk to you about. Not to like get too personal, but like we're talking about like the fact that like I'm in my own apartment now.
Yes.
I am getting to behave however I want to behave. I have no authority figures or like any...
Nobody's on your back anymore.
Yes. And so like my choices are completely my own. They're up to me.
Should I be afraid?
Yeah, no. Now I have a place to hide the body, huh? It's just like, I'm figuring who am I, you know? I'm relating to this character. I feel like I have repressed a lot of myself for a long time. And so now that there is essentially open horizons in front of me here, it's like, this film came at a weird time.
That's like a very unexpected thing.
Yeah.
Like with this movie specifically.
Yeah, I was expecting to be like heartbroken and terrified in the end. And when I watched it, I was like, oh, I don't know why I even thought this was something more than just like a very plain film.
I told you could do it.
Yeah.
No problem.
It's the kid thing. Like, everybody told you.
Like, I still feel it in some way. Like, that's repressed.
Right.
Being scared of the VHS like box artwork.
And all the adults going, oh no, that's a scary movie. You can't watch that, Tommy. You got to watch Shark Tales.
Shark Tales. Jesus.
You ever watch Surf's Up?
Have not seen that
You've
one.
never seen Surf's Up?
That's a bit after my time.
I'm going to recommend this film to you at some point on the podcast.
Is it good?
Yeah, I love it.
Is it related to Happy Feet in some way?
No, but I'm glad you think that's an option.
Like, I know one is snow and the other is a beach, but isn't there a penguin in both of them?
There is. You've got that going for you.
Okay. There's something there.
Right. That's a great film, man. You would love it. Anyway, back to Happy Feet. We're off track tonight.
It's okay.
Fuck it. Hey, we're drinking Le Fin du Monde if we didn't make it clear enough.
We are.
We're drinking what should be in a gold goblet. One of the prized coveted beers on the podcast.
You ain't kidding, brother. The beer announcement's coming late in the podcast because they were warm when we brought them home from the store.
Yeah.
So had to throw them in the freezer for a few minutes.
It's still great.
It's just as good as I remember, as always. Yeah. The direction, which I think is like kind of where we spun off and ended up here. I actually think the direction, camera movement, cinematography, like that whole package is much more impressive than you would think. If you paid special attention to it, like only that,
right.
Which I think I did last night when I was rewatching it, I found that the camera movement had so much purpose in each scene. Like the way it would move and establish like new compositions. A scene would begin, we would kind of like have a static shot. It would like then follow characters walking for a moment. And then like it would end on like a really great composition too. Like they were kind of bookended.
Yeah.
You know
That's a good
what I
way to,
mean?
hey, bookended. Fuck yeah.
A lot of long takes in this, a lot of short takes and quick edits too. Like it was kind of a lot, but barely notice it. The style is not in your face.
I think that's why I had a hard time kind of enjoying it for what it was. I mean, I only saw the film twice, and I rewatched the film today with the cat, and like we snuggled, and it was fucking amazing. When I watched it for the first time, like I just felt there was not enough substance. I was like actually kind of worried. I'm like, okay, how am I going to like talk about this? Because I feel like I read the book, and now I feel like I have nothing to say. You know what I mean? It's like when I rewatched it, I'm like, no, this is a lot more approachable than I thought it was going to be. So, gosh, where do we want to...
Going off of what you just said, the way I feel about this film actually reminds me a lot of how I felt about Pulp Fiction the first time I saw it.
Ooh, okay.
And I know that you kind of have a middling opinion on Pulp Fiction, too.
And I would like really love to rewatch Pulp Fiction now because I think I would enjoy it.
That's where it opens up.
Right.
Like for me, it did at least. And this is kind of like that, too.
I want to ask you about like the score, because I think the score is something that like I don't even notice.
I couldn't tell you any motifs from it, or like any melodies.
It never felt like there was like a through theme.
I actually don't know if this would be a criticism from me though. When I was reading into like I know this is base level reporting, but like going through like the Wikipedia article of something, there's a statement in there about the score where it was meant to not be noticed.
Right.
And like the editing was supposed to keep things like keep you distracted. Yeah. So it was really string heavy. And this is a weird statement, but it wasn't too dissimilar from the other film that we're about to talk about tonight. Friday the 13th 4. Like this high shrill kind of strings.
Right.
Like that's all I remember, but it always felt appropriate tone wise.
Right. The film opens up and closes with what seems to be like it bookended pretty well.
There you go.
We're fucking expanding our vocabulary tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It's slightly uncomfortable, like the whole film. I feel like that's kind of why we're probably having a hard time talking about it. Like it doesn't like terrify you or make you fearful, at least to the extent of like what I would consider like a normal thriller. Like it feels just like everything is just so uncomfortable, from like our character to the subject matter.
It's weird because there's not much tension in regards to like the safety of our main character until the end. It's mostly just like unsettling, either because there's 20 men in the room looking at her, or she's talking to like Lecter or something. Like that's where like the tension comes in. You know, I barely consider this a thriller or horror movie. It's there kind of. And this goes back to you saying like this kind of sets the groundwork for what we consider thrillers now. But this is really just like a complex character study drama.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Okay.
Until the third act, at least.
All right. I think the third act has just as an important role in that theme. So can we just establish like the theme is woman in the workplace or a woman in a man's society? So here's a couple things. So one, she's in a male dominated field.
Yes.
Two, her work study is the behavioral sciences of criminal psychology, whatever you want to say, which psychiatric, psychopathic inmates are predominantly male.
Yes.
All of the challenges are male related. So like work challenges, it's by men in the workplace and then out in the field. I mean, she's hunting a psychopath. And I think by the end of the film, we get to see like a little bit of like a hurrah on that theme. Like obviously she kills Buffalo Bill, but like I think there's more to be said, and we'll arrive there.
I mean, the killer only kills women. I talked about like the temperature changing when she comes into the room.
Right.
I don't know if I'm right about this. Like maybe you'll have a say on it, but I think that Jack Crawford sends her to Lecter because she is a woman. Like,
because he shuts down men.
And like that kind of, I don't even know like if it explicitly gets on like the sexuality of Dr. Lecter, but yeah, there's like something to that too.
They do have like, there is sexual tension between them as well.
Yeah.
Like
he says crude things to her.
Right. But he also like respects her too, in a way. There are a couple of scenes that, can we just highlight the fact that the book is a lot different than the film in terms of the way at least I received it. Like Crawford's relationship in the book really changes everything. Granted, in the movie, I think she feels more like a chess piece for him, which I think when you kind of look at the movie bird's eye view, it feels that way. Like that's the way the character is operating, at least in the film. But like you said, the sexual tension there is like very subtle. And I think like a lot of it has to do with like the camera work. Like the opening scene when she's speaking to Crawford dominates the shots.
I feel like every conversation scene is kind of like this.
Right.
Or like in somebody's face inches away.
And if both people are in camera, it's always over the male shoulder and she's cramped in the background. And so like that is applying this male, the conversating's being dominated by male. She always looks uncomfortable, which by the way, we're going to talk about like incredible performances.
Yes.
So when every little thing in this film is being tied into this theme that we're working with, we're getting there.
We're getting there. The Chilton guy.
Dr. Chilton. Dickweed.
When she shows up to his office for the first time, he's like, I've never seen a detective so attractive before.
Yeah, it's like Jesus, be more fucking creepy.
Then it cuts to her and she gives like a brilliant eye roll in the moment, like in a literally half-second shot. The film is littered with moments like that right there. It's kind of perfect in a way.
This is something I want to talk about. As I'm getting older, I'm starting to recognize body language, and especially like in the workplace, like a lot of like body language is like the majority of our communication. And so when this film is on the back of that, I am coming to an age where I feel that more often than I have in the past, where I recognize body language being like very indicative of like what people's true intentions are. And, I'm getting like, I've read some interesting books lately, let's put it that way. Like, this is a weird point to make, but it's just like in this film, it's so heavy with this body language, like you're saying, like eye rolls, like subtle like mouth twitches. There like is so much emotion to read on Foster's face, and there can be like a multitude of little things that you can almost like hear in her head just by the way she portrays her face.
You know how later in the film, there's a scene where her and this other female that is in the program with her, like they share 2 scenes together maybe.
Right.
And they're sharing details about the case. We're doing that close-up shot composition between the 2 of them. And her friend, while talking about like this horrific case, like there's shots where her lips are trembling in like the most subtle manner. It's really hard to catch. But I was like, whoa, this character with less than 2 minutes of screen time had something going in the facial acting.
I think something to be said about those being very, very short moments. Like it's in the book, that relationship is a lot more developed as well. Like the roommate.
I don't even know her name.
Right. And exactly. In the book, it's a lot more explored. But in the film, they're on even playing fields on shot composition. They're treated as equals in the way the film displays their relationship in comparison to when she's talking to men like Lecter, Crawford, other detectives, other police officers, interviewing people, doing field work. And again, very subtle, but it showcases the theme perfectly. It's very, very intentional. And it's something that I don't think I've ever really noticed in a film quite like this one. Because I think it's so stripped back and plain that like it kind of has to be perfect in this way.
There's a lot of focus on it. Do you want to talk about how this theme corresponds with the title of the film? I don't know if...
Tell me what you're thinking.
During the last meeting between Starling and Dr. Lecter, he gets her to confess about her history, where when she was a young girl, she tried to save a lamb off the farm and wasn't able to. And it's like haunted her for her entire life. And then now in this current setting, she's still trying to save that lamb by trying to save Buffalo Bill's victim.
Correct.
It's in the title of the movie, Silence of the Lambs. Is the lamb a metaphor for women like not being able to speak out about like the men related problems within the theme? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That was a really very convoluted way of saying it, but like it must be really important to be the title in like that monologue.
You might be onto something. I don't know if I'm there with you yet, though. I think
I don't know if I'm with me on this yet. He's curious.
We might be scratching the iceberg on this one. Or the tip of it. I feel like, to me, I think it more has to do with her motivation than anything. I don't know that she's the lamb. It's just like, I think something that's really important to comment on with her relationship with Lecter. Starling she's a patient, like in this film. She is a patient of Dr. Lecter's, and he is performing his clinical psychiatry on her. Little does she know, the film sets him up to be like this horrific thing, like from the beginning. So we get introduced to Lecter as a character through Crawford, and he states, "You do not want Hannibal Lecter in your head, and that's for one reason and one reason only." Cut. Oh, he's a monster. Like fucking Chilton. And it fucking
great editing, by the way.
Yeah. And that's our first introduction to the film, or to Hannibal. That's our like red flag warning, like, hey, you do not want Dr. Lecter in your head. The film misleads you, though, to thinking that he's going to be like this deranged, psychopathic, he's a cannibal, Hannibal a cannibal. You go down a line of inmates, and they get crazier and crazier and crazier. Literally, a guy fucking throws cum in her face.
Dear God.
And then you get to the very end.
Standing there with perfect posture.
Yes.
His introduction shot is amazing, by the way.
Yes. And so, I think that's really important to think about. Their visits are like therapy sessions, and it's very, I feel like you can almost miss it. Like, I feel like Lecter's presence is felt throughout the film because Lecter is what is transitioning our main character through like this.
She's operating on his advice.
Right. He's the mechanism that's like turning this whole machine. Our character is going to come into the film and come out of the film on the other side learning something. Lecter is that point.
Yeah.
That character he's the device that enacts change in our character. And his presence is felt through the whole film, even though he has like 16 minutes of screen time. It's really important to note. The whole movie backs on the relationship that they build, which is really strange. And I think like it kind of makes great comment because she also is doing the thing that no one else has ever been able to do, get close to Hannibal Lecter.
That is interesting. I kind of have questions about the lore of Hannibal Lecter. There's things I want to know about him so I can apply that knowledge to like his and Clarice's relationship. All I know about him so far is that he's a psychiatrist. I think he misses doing the job.
Yep.
I think the cannibal thing kind of got in the way. Like, I don't know if he like even likes being a cannibal, really. Like, he only eats people he finds rude or that stand in his way.
Right.
That's all I know, really. Like, what is it to this character besides that?
In this universe, it's played by Anthony Hopkins. In another universe, it's played by Mads Mikkelsen.
There's a film before this one.
Yes.
Called Manhunter. I actually have a VHS copy of it that I got from my uncle.
Really?
In the past.
Oh, yeah.
And that iteration of the character was played by Brian Cox, who nowadays is known as Logan Roy from Succession.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm curious about like the lore of this character, of this world. I know there's 2 or 3 sequels after this movie.
It's like Hannibal and Hannibal Returns.
It's Hannibal,
Red Dragon,
Hannibal Rising.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And there's a 4th guy that portrays the character, but like nobody talks about that one. Probably because it's bad. I don't know.
Probably. Yeah, it's strange. This is the film that gets focused on for sure.
They could not replicate the success.
Never.
Ridley Scott directed the sequel to this, and it's supposed to be ass.
It's kind of crazy to think about.
I think Julianne Moore plays Clarice.
Yeah, Julianne Moore.
I heard it's just not the same.
Yeah, it's probably not. I think Foster captured something that was like really special. And I think there's probably a reason she won Best Actress.
I didn't know that she was a child star. Like, she'd been around her whole life before this. Yeah. And she already had an Oscar win before this, too, I think.
Really?
I think. Could be wrong about that. I don't know much about Jodie Foster.
Yeah, a different generation.
I've seen this in, like, Panic Room and Flight Plan.
She'll probably, like, go out with, like, Meryl Streep status and shit.
She directs stuff now.
Really?
But I don't know what she's directed. Like, some episodes of Black Mirror, I think I read.
Oh, really?
And there's another one, too. Might have been, like, House of Cards.
House of Cards, fuck yeah.
Maybe.
I kind of liked House of Cards while I was watching it. I watched like the first season or 2.
I loved season 1. That's a David Fincher show.
Really?
Yeah, it fell off the rails when Kevin Spacey got outed.
It all makes sense now with Mulholland Drive. He was trying to tell us early on, hey, this guy's a fucking weirdo.
Mulholland Drive is all about Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, that's a fucking theory for you.
Oh, Lord.
Sorry.
You never know. Since we're talking about actors, Anthony Hopkins. Of course, he's brilliant in this film. Him and Foster won best lead, male and female, which is kind of funny because you were talking about like his minimized screen time earlier, but he's just as much of a lead as she is.
Right.
Same category. He like wasn't that known before this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he was very successful till this took off.
He did a lot of smaller roles, like rom-com, I think, too. And like, or not rom-com, but like
he loves
romance.
the theater, by the way.
He also loves classical music.
I bet. He seems like the man that would do that.
He wrote a waltz. He's wrote a classical piece, yeah. He's classically trained.
I find it interesting because nowadays we kind of look at Anthony Hopkins as one of the all-time greats.
Right.
But he already had like a 10 to 15 year span of career before this, and like he did not catch on. I think he was cast in this because of his role in Lynch's The Elephant Man, which he's great in, by the way. And he got Oscar nominations for that. And then there's like a 10-year dry spell of nothing until this movie,
right?
Which is weird.
It was kind of weird because I know he's like a really sweet guy.
I'm sure.
And like he's playing. It was really crazy. Like
his monologuing is insane.
God, it was really good. Literally when he kills a man, I'm like, yeah, that's how you fucking kill a dude. Like that is how it's done. That is how it actually is. It's not like the other film we're going to talk about tonight.
I can't wait for that.
I forgot we're doing that.
We'll be all nice and boozed up for that one.
Jesus Christ. It was so believable in a way that I think, we're talking about like the statistics of our society. You're talking about the people that lie on the outskirts, like the behavior that is the most dark, the most terrifying to think about, people that live in our society that perform actions like this. Like, I've not been able to stop thinking about it. Seriously. Like,
you do get like that after watching films like this.
Yeah. And you're like, well, I'm like, we're living on our own now. And I'm like, I started thinking about like all of like these statistics I've heard where it's like drunk people they're statistically more likely to be murdered.
Drunk people?
Yes. Like drunk people are like, if you're intoxicated, it's statistically, it's more likely that you're going to be murdered or like commit murder.
That makes sense.
And like I've just been like thinking about like, wow, like there are people like this that live among us, and I'm on my own now, and I'm like, that's fucking crazy. Like I better like just be safe, like lock my doors like every night. And like I think about like home defense now, and I'm like, okay, like what is the best way to like close the doors? It freaks me out. It freaks me out. Like I'm like, what the fuck? Like that could happen. The probability is low, but like it could happen. Like it's crazy to think about.
It has to happen to someone.
Right.
You always think
it won't happen to me.
Everybody thinks they're the exception.
They never thought that like their family member could be murdered or something. It's kind of insane.
Oh, that thought kind of goes in with what happens to our victim in the movie. I bet any woman is probably scared of like being picked up in a van.
Dude, Elizabeth is like, when I'm not around, she's like, it's weird for me to like be out on my own. And I'm like, yeah, it is, I guess.
I don't like Liv going out and doing like a lot in a period without me, you know?
Right.
It's scary, dude.
Dude, I get anxious when she doesn't answer the phone.
Yeah, so do
I'm
I.
like, what the fuck? Why is she not answering the phone? I'm like, it's not like, oh, is she cheating on me? It's like, something happened. Like, she get in a car wreck. Like, is she okay? Like, I'm like, she okay? I'm like, am I gonna have to kill somebody? Am I have to like hunt her down like fucking Liam Neeson?
You have that thought because you can't trust men.
Right.
Most men.
Exactly. That's the thing.
This movie.
Right.
God damn it.
Exactly. Isn't it crazy?
It can happen to you, whoever hears this, you know?
Right. It's so uncomfortable. These movies coming out at a weird time. There's like a lot of like different ways it like it played to my like psyche right now. It's so strange. And I think one of the reasons why I'm starting to appreciate it is because we're having this conversation, because I need to like unpack this. This is something that I love about the podcast, is that I can watch a movie and be like, that was good, and like never think about it again.
I've been that way with many movies that we've done.
Doesn't that suck?
I mean, I can recall everything about it once it's brought up to me, but it's like if you ask me about what's like a movie we did way early, like Life of Pi or something.
Yeah.
Like,
it wasn't like super, it wasn't too long ago actually.
It's a little over a year ago, right?
Was it really?
I think so.
Damn.
That was a long time ago.
Fuck. We're starting to like, I'm starting to get to the point where I can't remember our catalog. Fuck.
But yeah, that is weird. I've seen so many movies that I just don't remember.
At least we're recording it. At least we can like be like, oh yeah, that's what we thought at that time. You know what I mean? It'll be interesting to see how like opinions change over the years. You know what I mean? We're going to come back to this and be like, it's overrated.
You never know.
You know what I mean?
It was ringing for me this time around. These last two viewings, at least, where it didn't before in the past.
Right.
Honestly.
Oh, really? Was that something like, how many times have you seen the film?
I think I'd seen it 3 times in my life before you recommended it. Like when I returned to it, I remembered every beat perfectly.
Really? Okay. So let me ask, with that being said, when you were watching the film this time around, since you can remember like every beat, what was the things for you where you're like, okay, like this is working for me, or like, oh, I see this in a different way now?
A lot of it is what we've hit already, like cinematography, editing, and the theme. Like that's the stuff that was kind of like popping for me this time. I think in the past, I would focus on the thriller element, the hunt for Buffalo Bill.
Okay.
Where in retrospect now, that's like one of the least interesting parts of the film to me. I couldn't tell you step by step how they get there to find him.
Right.
Like those details don't feel very important to me.
Okay.
In the long run.
I think it's kind of strange because I know like one of your favorite films is Zodiac, and like that film is like we don't find the killer film. It's a completely different thing than this, where we know who the killer is, we find the killer, we kill the killer, and we get away. In the end, we'll get there. But I have comments to make about the end, but we'll get there. I guess like for me, I'm thinking like, okay, this is from my perspective how I see you. I'm like, this is my guy's genre. Like this is my guy's thing. You know, this is what he wants.
Yeah.
And so for me, if like you've already seen it 3 times, and do you think it's because you have a more critical eye now, where you can like enjoy the film in certain ways that you've never been able to?
I think that has to be it. Where years ago I didn't have any knowledge about film qualities.
Do you like, so what was like your opinion of the film before this?
I thought it was good.
Okay.
And like that was it. Like I never thought about it after watching it.
Because you've seen so much more than me. I don't know if you know this.
Have I?
So far. Yeah, you've seen like, you're so far ahead of me in that way.
In a certain genre, maybe.
Yeah, but like you and Liv are like movie watchers.
We are.
And you guys watch a lot of TV.
We do.
You guys appreciate a lot of like different things. And I don't really have that level. And like you're older than me. You've been on this earth for like 6 more years than me.
That is also true.
And like you've been an adult a lot longer. So you've had time to ingest a lot more media than I have. So you have a different perspective on certain genres. Like this is a genre that I'm not familiar with, nor do I really dip my toes in voluntarily.
Are you like unfamiliar with it though? I feel like you've seen like
I've seen some things, but like it's a like the thriller genre is not my thing. It is not. Like I don't seek it out very often. And now that I'm older, I'm starting to like appreciate horror. Like we're going to talk about a true schlock horror film after this. And like, I feel like while I hate it, I'm like going to be like, but that was kind of fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And like, I feel like as I'm getting older, I might appreciate these kind of films more. So I want to see more. I want to understand from your perspective, like, does it really stack up to you?
Like now against other things? It's hard to say because I barely look at this movie in that lens.
Okay. Okay, that's good information then.
And that's probably why it didn't click for me when I was younger.
Okay.
It was too subtle.
Okay.
I bet I loved the third act back then.
Yeah, now I'm like, when I watch the third act, I don't fucking care.
That's like one of the least interesting bits of the movie.
Exactly. The ending, I'm like, it was like you turn your brain off. Okay, perfect. We're hitting a fucking, we're hitting a pointer here. So
the third act becomes a little bit too set piecey for me. And also like logic of the situation kind of becomes a bit ridiculous to me as well.
Don't you think, yeah, we'll get, okay. I think why this movie achieved the level of success that it did is for this reason. Because the film from the first and second act are like the perfect character study. And I think it, like, for film buffs, it's like, yes, this is bare bones, character driven dialogue, composition. Like, it's the basics and masterpiece levels of making good film. And then third act is like, honey, we're going to go to see we're going to go see a new movie that everybody's talking about at the theater this weekend on Sunday at 3:00. You want to go watch it? It's real popular. Yeah.
Like it's the part that made it worth watching for those people.
Exactly. And like there's a reason why there's that level of commercial success. Like not everybody I know has seen Prisoners, but like this movie, like you can name drop this film and everybody be like, oh yeah,
everybody loves it.
Everybody knows about it. Like it got the Oscar buzz, and it strikes a certain chord where you have this really rich level of like filmmaking, and then it's like also like we can sell this based off of this point alone.
I'm not saying that those sections are bad. I think the filmmaking and the acting and whatever, like all those qualities are still strong in the third act, but it kind of feels like a betrayal of the tone that we've set.
Yeah, and that's something that like I think still bothers me. The third act in the book, it's still really great. It keeps this exact same pace. If there's something I can say that like the book and the film match up really well on is the pace. The pace of the book and the pace of the film, they're striking in harmony. Like they're perfect. Where it's a really slow burn, and the turning point where you have like when they bust into the house and they're buzzing on the door, Clarice opens the door. In the book, it's that. By the way, like it's like the same
like the sequence of events is
right. It's very similar.
Damn. Okay.
Yes. So like that was something that was taken from the book, where that pace really picks up. The chapters got shorter. They're all short chapters, and like there are like those long moments with Lecter and in these visits. Like I will say, I've read a lot of books in the last year. I'm almost at 20 books this year. I'm fucking hyped. About to hit that goal. I'm super hyped.
I'm at 0, so
I'm not trying to rub in your face, but like
I haven't started that one book yet, by the way.
That Murakami book.
Every night I'm like, I'm gonna sit down and read it, and then I end up washing the dishes and cleaning.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
Read a chapter before work. That's what I used to do. I used to read a chapter before work, and then like as I would read, I would get all my chores done, like all the things I need to get done during the day, and then I would read for like an hour before work.
Okay.
Because you'll get to the point where you're like, just start the habit. And then when the book picks up, you'll be like, I need to get all this done tomorrow so I can read like this much before work. Like it's getting fucking good.
I might have to try that. I've been a night reader mostly in the past.
I love reading in the evenings before bed. But anyway, besides the point.
It doesn't help that before the third act even gets going, the last meeting between Clarice and Lecter is like probably the best scene in the movie, or it's my favorite scene, at least in terms of how intense their dialogue becomes. Before we kind of like go into a bit of a schlocky direction, I just don't know how I feel about the big cage in the gymnasium with like the American flags wrapped around the building. Like, he kind of becomes Jason.
Yeah,
for a little bit.
In the book, it's so much better. Like it's treated with a level of respect that I think it deserves. And like again, I think it ties back to that point where it's like, this is the way we're gonna like kind of sell this film. Here's the other thing: when this film won the Oscar, it won from the year prior. I think it came out in November, the year before the next year's Oscars. So it like
February.
Okay.
Oscars are in April.
Okay. Right? So it's for the next year. So like it rode on the backbone all the way through.
Like most people would have forgotten about it by then.
Right. And I think the film, the way it kind of goes a little over the top with this aspect of Hannibal Lecter's character that the book doesn't do, I think it's what helps sell. And I think it's one of those factors that like had some staying power, albeit fantastic performances. Yeah, and I'm sure like that's the reason why they won. But like I think culturally, little moments like this where you kind of have a little bit of like that symbolic murder, classic horror, yeah, that's going to sell the general public a little bit more. It's not going to be so character study driven with that general audience. Because I think the way the film plays out too, like act to act, there isn't a lot of murder. There's like little disturbing moments that happen that can like kind of like leave breadcrumbs for people that don't really have the attention span of the character stuff, like the character drama.
The head in the jar, for example.
Exactly. It still has those tropes. Like we really haven't even talked about that, where like the opening of the car door in the storage unit, that shot specifically, or the shot of her running in the woods in the beginning on the training course. Those shots are homage back to like classic horror thriller Friday the 13th schlock we're going to talk about. Like,
a bit, yeah.
There are inklings of that to like give the impression that is still there. Those breadcrumbs are there. And I think you can capture, maybe I'm like trying to, people in the 90s were fucking dumb and they don't understand film, but like there's a reason. Like I think it's a factor.
It probably is. And I understand that they're trying to build a mythos around this character. Dr. Lecter, he's very well defined and realistic, but he kind of does feel a little mythological in terms of like his intelligence and being able to guess what other people are going to do.
Right.
And yada, yada. I think they just take it too far. I can forgive him taking the pin off screen. That's fine. I mean, I would love to see him take the pin in a scene. Like, how do you do it? When it comes to, he only has a few minutes to escape this building, and he creates like a scene. Like a scene. He has a scene.
Creates a diorama with this fucking dude's body.
And then in that time, he's able to place a body somewhere else, and he like wears the face of somebody. The film isn't clear about how much time passes here, but like the fast editing kind of makes it feel like really urgent. So it's like, how'd he do that? You know?
Exactly. The situation is dire and urgent and crazy, but then it's like you've had this really slow, methodical build with the character, dialogue-wise, where it's like his physicality is not the driving force behind this character, it's his words. And so when you have like this really hard line where the film changes right here in this moment, which it completely, like that's where the film changes. It feels like two different movies.
A bit, yeah.
It comes across really bizarre. From like my appreciation of film, like when we watched like Zodiac, I was like really nervous, but in the end I was like,
that movie is really front heavy in terms of violence. It kind of cools down after 30 minutes.
Exactly. A complete reversal. And it was a different level of understanding with like, okay, this isn't a thriller. It was more like these characters and studying like who's the real serial killer, and it felt like
I have a hard time reading where it leaves off in a way.
I don't know how to put it. It's like you lose yourself in the madness, and like everybody was like really defeated in that film.
In Zodiac?
Yes.
Oh yeah, everybody's life is way worse in the end.
Yeah, exactly. Murder makes life awful for everyone involved.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a fucking lesson for you. Put it in the Bible. We'll teach the kids.
I do think that it picks up a bit once we cut over to like Clarice accidentally discovering Buffalo Bill's hideout. Like, it's not my favorite scene in the movie, but I think it's very well executed.
The Buffalo Bill stuff, we haven't even talked about Buffalo Bill.
Some brilliant scenes with him.
I'd fuck me so hard. I'd fuck me. You know, him tucking his dick on camera might have been a lot in the 90s.
I bet this was super shocking.
In the 90s, it was probably like, Oh my goodness. Harold, I can't believe you took us to see this movie.
It's crazy that this isn't like the most memorable thing, honestly.
No one talks about the dick tuck. Everybody always talks about Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster.
And the lotion.
No one, and when the lotion on the skin, nobody talks about the dick tuck. You know, I'm going to bring...
They should. We should bring back the dick tuck.
Tell you what, when I go into work on Monday morning, oh shit, I am going to bring that up. Let people know.
You should.
I made a comment about that movie at work on Friday, and I said it puts the lotion in the basket. And everybody was like, that movie is so... that movie weirds me out, man.
I mean, are we just freaks for not being...
Phased by the dick tuck?
I've seen some crazy shit in film.
You've seen A House That Jack Built.
The House That Jack Built. Yes.
Oh, shit.
I've seen like 5 Von Trier films.
I want to see Antichrist.
I haven't seen that one yet.
I'd really like to see that. That's Von Trier, right?
It is.
Okay. I'd really like to see that. Defoe, but I know it's really fucked up. I bet it fucking destroys me.
I've been chasing that one for a while.
I don't think I'm ready.
I think I'm ready, but I don't know. I don't really like Von Trier that much.
At least you're not like, he's brilliant.
His film Dogville was fucking great.
Okay.
And then everything else has been like, you're trying too hard, man. You know? He'll come up on the podcast eventually.
We like Titan. I mean...
I love Titan.
I haven't seen it since. I think I mentioned, like, I'll never watch it again. Like, I don't want to ever...
I don't need to. Not yet.
That movie's, like, really traumatic as a viewer. That film is a lot to take in.
I recently watched the movie that influenced Titan.
Okay.
It's a Cronenberg movie called Crash.
Okay.
Where people get sexual satisfaction out of like engaging in really dangerous behavior, like getting into car accidents. That's kind of how they get off. And that's like the plot of that movie.
That's fucking crazy.
I actually loved it.
That's fucking crazy.
But I wouldn't recommend it to any normal person, you know? But that's what we like. Or that's what I like, at least.
It's a very niche category of porn.
True.
Car crash porn. That's fucking great.
But that's why Silence of the Lambs just ain't shocking me too hard, guys.
It just ain't hitting. You know? Literally, that's something that I want to talk about. What is up with sexual situations being so closely tied to horror film? Because I think I got it after I watched Friday the 13th. Why is that human behavior so highlighted in this genre of film?
Where it usually leads to death.
Right.
In some way.
I don't know if it's just like the emotions are high where it's like very primal and like that just like goes hand in hand, or if it's like we can really dumb this down by like getting tits out.
It puts the characters in a vulnerable situation where if you were caught with your pants down, literally, then like what the fuck do you do? You know?
Well, officer, he came in. I didn't know what to do. I had my dick in my hand. I didn't. Can you describe this man in any way, what kind of hair color he was or blue eyes? Well, after I picked my dick up off the floor, I didn't know what to think.
Well, if you were mid-deed and like somebody broke down the door... Stay with me here. Do you reach for the gun or your pants first? On an instinct level. I feel like I'm reaching for the pants. I'm like, don't see me. Give me a second. I'm not at my Sunday's best.
Oh, shit. Oh, fuck.
I need another beer, by the way.
I don't. Jesus Christ. That's fucking great.
I don't even know how we ended up here.
I hope I reach for the gun because if something was to happen and I'm at my wife's funeral and her dad's like, why couldn't you save her? I go, I couldn't help myself, Jerry. I have my dick in my hand. I'd never live it down if I had my dick in my hand. Well, Elizabeth was getting fucking murdered.
Do people have sex in this movie?
No. I mean, a guy jerks off, but...
That does happen.
But then he dies. Hey, that's a trope. That's a connection for you. You jerk off in a movie, you're going to fucking die.
It's very loose, but
yeah.
You know what? Good for you.
When I think about dudes jerking off, I typically have some good ideas that come from it.
Sounds like.
That's going to be a fucking soundbite.
That's going at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, it sure is.
I haven't done that in a long time.
There's one for you. We're back to form.
There we go. We haven't really talked about I guess we kind of briefly touched on it. Jodie Foster ending up at Buffalo Bill's in the end, which I guess is just like an elongated chase scene.
Yeah.
But I thought it's actually very stressful in terms of the way the sound design of the dog barking and the lady screaming.
Oh, yeah.
And 80s new wave music playing in the background the whole time. Like, it's a very chaotic mix.
Yeah.
Where you don't get that anywhere else in the film.
Mind you, this is not too long after our infamous dick tucks, so
that is true.
My mind is already like, what the fuck?
There's an excellent shot with Buffalo Bill once the lights go out and the night vision is enacted, and you get like a portrait style shot of him with the night vision glasses on against a perfectly dark background. And I was like, whoa.
I almost thought it was like painterly for the film.
It was. And it wasn't even that different from the composition that it uses in every other
other male. Right. This is a great point because there's something we need to talk about. The male gaze in this film. I think we like brushed the surface of it briefly.
We've hit it a few times.
But like I think this is kind of one of the important things in the film where I think this is a fucking thought for you. In the film, the way Starling moves through from front to finish, the male gaze is very prevalent. From the beginning with her first scene with Crawford in the first 5 minutes to Chilton to Lecter down to
random
Buffalo
sheriff people even.
And then you get to like the most extreme like Buffalo Bill. It's like along the way we start at like a very respectable level and she's doing battle verbally and socially. She's standing up for herself from like beginning to end. And like I'm not trying to be like preachy like new age feminism, pump my fist, woohoo. But the film structure, she's respected and we strip her down from society down to like this primal level of instinct where the male gaze changes with that. Crawford, her relationship with him, it's like it's very mature and respectable, even though like there is like some subtle chess pieces moving from his side of things onto her, like he has that power over her, but it feels very clean cut, reserved, and respectable. And then you get to Chilton where she's exposed in a way where he's overbearing sexually, verbally. And then you have Lecter, he's tearing her apart psychologically, where she has the upper hand on a young man in the Smithsonian Museum in the bug department.
That's something I want to touch on too.
Yeah,
with
like
this theme.
She has the upper hand the whole time. Like it feels like she is at her most comfortable here.
She pulls the line, "Are you flirting with me?"
Right. This is like the only time in the film where like she seems relaxed with other men. And in the end, it's like she's terrified with like Buffalo Bill. And the film kind of takes this metamorphosis of
the different forms
of
like objectifying a woman,
right,
like, to the point of a man who like covets the skin of a woman and like sees them as objects,
right,
and that bare bones, I've got you in my sights, literally with like night vision goggles and everything,
right,
like this like extreme gaze onto her.
Again, I think it's the camera work that is
such
really
a good shot.
The editing and the shots are what really sell the film's theme. It is so unified throughout. I think that's why the film is impressive to me, even though like its color palette is some of the most muted. The film is not grand in its spectacle. The film makes you feel small.
Like it's not trying to give any flair to
Right.
the subject matter. It's like, this is dark shit.
Yes. It's like, let's get down to like human psychology and human behavior at like some of its ugliest forms. That's why I feel like it's so disturbing and uncomfortable. It wasn't the body stuff. For some reason, I thought that was going to bother me. It like, I didn't even give a fuck about
It was mild.
Yeah. It's the deep psychological shit that like terrifies me. It's the darkness of like actual human conversation on a day-to-day basis where like this perspective of a character is very believable for a person that lives on this earth. Like it feels weird to explore human psychology through this character for that reason. Like it's so uncomfortable and it's very believable. Like there's such a level of realism to everything. It blows your mind. Like it's dark shit.
We're coming out on the other side of this thing in the exact way we predicted at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, I know. Fuck.
How do you feel about the final few minutes?
I don't know.
I don't know how to read Clarice accepting her graduation from this program and the phone call from Lecter. Like, it leaves off on a weird note that I don't know how to read into that in terms of like the theme or like what the film is saying.
You know, because I think it's really easy to, again, like we kind of talked about it earlier, where like it kind of feels like this movie's split in different ways. You know, that the first two acts feel like a completely different movie than the third. But I think the ending of the film kind of is even more ambiguous, because I think you can like kind of attribute it to this being like, I guess technically the second film in a series.
But is it?
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a continuation.
Red Dragon comes before.
I meant more like the Manhunter film. Like,
right.
I don't know how that plays into anything.
I think we are both blind to where the film sits in the rest of. We have no idea. So I think it kind of opens up the door for like, does this feel like kind of like a cheap,
like next time, kids?
Next time to be continued? Or is it like, oh, this is actually a comment on like the theme that we just talked about. Like, oh yeah, like Lecter still wins. Like, he's the man that has still the most power over her. Like, everybody else's relationship with her is resolved, but him.
He makes a comment about not worrying about him though, right?
He said, don't worry about me. The world's more interesting with you in it.
Yeah.
He respects her.
And earlier in the film, she even acknowledges it before he says it to her, where she says, he wouldn't come after me. He'd consider that rude. You know, I don't feel future danger for Clarice.
Right. It kind of feels weird because it's like, to all Autobots out there, you know where to find us among humans. Like, it feels like kind of one of them moments where it's like, goodbye. It's like, until next time.
I mean, I can't imagine what else would end the film. Like,
right.
if you cut this out, like, what scene would you end with? Like, with the existing stuff we have.
I think the way the film ends in the last shot, I think the film, to me, came across, it was like, okay, wow, this was like an interesting character study. The end of the film feels like, and don't forget, like, these monsters are living among you.
Yeah, like life goes on.
Don't forget, like, they could be the person walking behind you kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, they could just be like your average Joe. And
I was like, there you go.
I was like, okay, that felt like a little comment there. But also, to me, for the film, I would have rather been like a fade to black after her like calling out his name, like, Lecter, Dr. Lecter. But if you'd have done that, I'd been like, oh, it was like a really cheap horror gag at the end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, maybe it was like a respectable tying off the bow there. Like, I don't know, like tying the knot. It felt clean enough for me to be like, okay, and scene.
I'm not even mad about this.
Right.
I'm just kind of like
curious to know what the direction and like what the intention is.
Yeah. It's a good ending if you want to see Dr. Chilton eat shit later on.
He does in the following film. I think he like mangles his face and lets him live.
Really?
Yeah. I think.
This is the type of character I wouldn't mind seeing
mangled
on a dinner plate.
I think the next film explores that because I think Lecter is like more of the main character and like his actions are, I could be completely wrong, but like that was my impression for what I've seen.
I only vaguely read into some reviews of Red Dragon, or no, Hannibal, and that's it. Like, I didn't check out anything else. I know that nothing else is all that well received, so like I don't feel the need to continue this series after this. I'm like, I'm good with this one.
Yeah, and I also feel like
I might watch Manhunter eventually because I love Brian Cox.
And you also like you own it on VHS. It feels like you have to like watch it.
It does.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Not on VHS, but like I feel like you need to watch it.
You must seek out a VHS or VCR.
God, I wish, dude. I used to have toy soldiers on VHS. And that was like one of my prized possessions from my childhood.
Small Soldiers?
Small Soldiers. Great
film.
Yes.
As a 7-year-old, for sure. I loved it too.
You remember the movie Little Monsters?
I don't know. What's that one?
I might have to get like really fucking high and watch Little Monsters. It was like a little kid gets visited by a blue guy with horns, and he's like, hey, what's up, buddy? And then he takes him to like the fucking monster world and shit. It's a weird movie. But yeah, man, how do you think the film stacks up for you ratings wise? I know what mine is for sure. I'd be curious because I know let me ask this first. What would you have rated it before the podcast, and what would you rate it after? Because you'd seen it previously.
That is a great question. I think when I saw it as a 18, 19-year-old, I probably would have given it like a 7. Now, I actually don't know.
Okay.
I think the filmmaking, the tone, the acting, so much is working for me here that like I feel like I want to give it a 10, but on an emotional level, it's still not hitting that way. I'm going to go with like a solid 9.
That's where I sit. I feel the exact same way. I think what we commented on earlier, where it's like, okay, it's very similar to The first two acts are like remind me so much of like Moneyball, like a completely different tone and but like very dry, slow burn, and like really deeply understand characters and their motivations in like these really niche settings. That's the kind of filmmaking that I really enjoy when it's not a spectacle. Like, things don't have to be pretty. I think this movie shines in the first two acts in a way that I love with a critical eye. Like, I'm like, this is peak. This is a undeniable truth of filmmaking. And then in the third act, it kind of like really puts a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. And like, it's not even that it's like not true to the source material. It's just the fact that it comes across tonally, it shifts a little too much for me.
It's a little too heightened.
Yeah. And I think a 9 is like very fair. I think the great moments really outshine like some of the lackluster things that we talked about. And like, that's really probably the only thing. The movie's really tight. It's like 2 hours long, but it feels like an hour and a half. It's really good.
Piss break.
The floor is yours, man. Like, come on, hit me with it.
So the last 3 weeks has been one of the most difficult periods of time in terms of me finding what I wanted to do next.
Really? I always feel like you have a hard time.
Maybe so. This might be true. And I feel like it's at least been a few months since I've like truly been lost in those terms. Like through the summer, I kind of had a roadmap in my mind of what I wanted to do. And I did those things.
Is it the fact that like the seasons are changing and I feel like our whole vibe is about to get fucked up maybe?
I think so. Because we've done MCR, Evil Dead, and Silence of the Lambs. Those three feel like they go together in a weird way.
We're going to do another one after this. It feels like it goes together somehow.
You think so?
Friday the 13th? Like,
oh, yeah.
Like, I feel like we're going to do another podcast after this where it's like, we're still hitting the same wavelength somehow.
That too. I almost forgot. We have another podcast to record tonight. Mm-hmm. The reason why it's been so hard is because I had a roadmap of what I wanted to do. There's a few different directions I've been wanting to take the podcast. There are some directors I want to bring back to the table. They desperately need to be talked about again. There's like some auteur stuff, some art house directors I want to hit. Mm-hmm. And that might be more suitable for post-Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, that's where we
January, February.
A bit. So we're actually doing an album this time around.
Fuck yeah.
The way I came to this decision is that several months ago, you bought a keyboard.
Yeah, I did.
And there was a comment you made on one of our most recent music podcasts where you said that I don't challenge you as much now musically than I do like in film.
Right.
I kind of wanted to like these two things. I kind of wanted to bring them together. We do a lot of rock centric stuff on the podcast.
Yeah. Rock and hip hop.
Deviating from that a little bit. And this is an artist, you know, an album you probably know of. I actually wrote my spiel down.
Okay. Fuck yeah. Look at you.
The following 1976 album fuses R&B, soul, funk, and jazz fusion and is by one of the most prolific musicians in history. While he was initially more known for his harmonica playing, his later use of synthesizers and electronic instruments reshaped the conventions of modern R&B.
Okay.
Also, he's the only artist to have 3 consecutive albums win Album of the Year at the Grammys.
Damn.
And this album is the 3rd of those albums. It is Stevie Wonder, Songs in the Key of Life.
Oh, fuck. I love you.
This is a recent discovery on my part. I fell in love with this record so much over the last week and a half that it felt right.
Yeah, it does.
And you will most likely know a lot of the songs on this album. And if you don't know the songs themselves, most of it, if not like every instrumental on this record has been used in hip hop as a sample at some point.
Yeah.
Like it felt like, oh wait, I've heard that before. It's one of those records. A lot of jamming, a lot of piano, a lot of singing. This will be fun. And we'll listen to some tracks tonight.
Dude. I don't think you realize how perfect this album is going to be for where I'm at in my life right now.
You think so?
I think this is going to be a fucking beautiful podcast. Like, I like can already tell right now that I think I might like cry on the podcast for the first time next time. Like it might be that good. That just seems like it's perfect for where I'm at in the headspace that like I think it's going to be awesome.
And that's kind of what I was going for.
You're the man.
We've been doing
You're
a lot of
man.
dark stuff recently. I'm usually not the one to bring brightness to the podcast. And
yeah, you ain't fucking wrong. I guess I'm the one that set us on this dark path.
A little bit of a role reversal.
There you go.
Going on here.
Fuck yeah, man.
It's a very optimistic record. Of course, there's like love stuff in terms of like the lyricism, but Stevie Wonder was a very well-known humanitarian presence. A lot of like political-ish topics, but everything is tackled with optimism. And I hope this is something that you're into.
You're the man. Fuck yeah, dude. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. Alex Getter is the fucking man.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good recommendation. I'm really hyped for that. Thanks so much, dude. That's gonna be fucking awesome.
I can't remember the last time we dipped into like a classic period in terms of music.
This is gonna be like I'm not just excited for like how the music sounds, but like thinking about like when it was made. Yeah, this is gonna be fucking awesome, man.
I've been going through his classic period, so I'll have like the context. Like I want to know his records outside of this one too, and I'll bring that to the table. So,
you're the man.
Oh,
all right.
Sorry, one last note.
Yeah.
This is important. The last 4 tracks, I don't know if it's the same way on Spotify, but it combines an EP at the end of the track list of this record, and I want you to ignore those because they're not part of the actual album. And I'll show you later. We'll see if Spotify is the same way as Apple.
Okay.
But
all right.
Yes.
Fair enough. Getter, if you could do me the honors of getting us out of here and on to the next crazy bit that we're going to do, I'd really appreciate it.
Adios.